Kia ora, and I hope you're having an excellent conference. I'm so very sorry that I can't be there with you in person. It's been my privilege to speak with you in person at KLIP in the past, and I know that the expertise, the warmth, and the friendship that's present at every KLIP gathering will be a source of joy to you all. In these next few minutes, I wanted to share a perspective on AI, which I believe is absolutely crucial for senior communication leaders and executives. Having worked with AI for the last decade, its evolution and absorption into our daily life has been accelerated in recent years, as we know. It's very much part of our day-to-day. But put simply, we really need to fundamentally shift how we view AI. Since the general release of generative AI and more recently active agents, we've treated AI as this frictionless, helpful tool, a magic box for prompts and productivity. But we have to realise that that era is over. Today, we need to recognise AI for what it truly is: fragile, politically exposed digital infrastructure. As things stand at the moment, AI is a massive strategic risk to your organisation's reputation and its very operational survival. We need to take a look at the end of neutral AI and consider the titans versus the tigers, understanding the dominance of the people and organisations that are controlling the technology, navigating the way that we can approach the switch-off threat, uncovering this policy iceberg that's before us, and why you've really got to look at your crisis protocols. And last but not least, how can you reclaim that operational agency? We need to shatter the old illusion that AI is just an ever-present neutral background helper sitting on our laptops or devices. AI is not just about prompts and content generation. It's literally the submerged essential infrastructure embedded into our search engines, our public services, our cyber systems and daily workflows. Think of it like a massive iceberg. Those shiny tools and models are entirely dependent on this hidden infrastructure, the stack that's underneath it. And that stack is becoming deeply concentrated and heavily contested politically. Now, this breakdown. Relying on a single AI stack for your critical communication workflows is exactly like a factory relying on a single politically volatile supplier for all its steel. We really used to believe that AI would be this democratic, open internet global utility, but unfortunately the reality is that it's highly regional. It's driven by extreme compute scarcity, and it's concentrated in the hands of a very few private megacorporations and state-aligned ecosystems. Which brings us to the notion of titans versus the tigers. I've talked about the continental drift in AI over many years, but we've seen this drift turn into geopolitical battle lines now that are drawn over who controls the foundations of our digital world. Sadly, we don't have one clean, happy global internet ethos. Instead, we're caught in a squeeze between competing blocks. And this dynamic is forcing entire nations, public service agencies, private companies, any kind of organisation to adopt foundational systems that they absolutely do not control. Essentially, we trade our operational agency just for access. So you really need to fundamentally understand your digital supply chain. Are you reliant on the titans, those US giants like Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic, which are driven by private capital and commercial dominance? Or are you operating on the tigers, the China-aligned parallel ecosystem that are built by players like Baidu and Alibaba, driven by state direction in many instances, as well as strategic self-reliance? They're both embedding their systems globally, but they carry totally different operational risks. And this continental drift, this geopolitical divide, builds into some deep structural dependence. As you can see, vast capital and essential compute power are locked together in a circular loop. You've got cloud giants investing billions into model labs, who then turn around and pay those exact same cloud providers for compute power, all bottlenecked by chip suppliers like Nvidia. This concentrates the future of global communication systems into the hands of a very small cluster, and frankly, their incentives rarely align perfectly with any kind of democratic accountability or public trust. This systemic fragility creates massive collateral exposure. Think about dependent markets, especially in the APAC region, places like New Zealand, Australia, and Malaysia. Our smaller economies cannot win the frontier AI race, but also we can't afford to just be passive users. If US or EU export controls change, or if a geopolitical sanction drops as we've seen over the last few months, or more likely, and generally will be the case, if compute costs suddenly spike by 400% overnight, critical digital infrastructure could be massively disruptive. Europe's moving towards the introduction of systems and platforms that will reduce their dependency. One alternative to the Microsoft ecosystem will go live next week. But for the rest of us, it's not looking very promising. That means the withdrawal, technical or political, of AI provision is a severe risk, as well as being an economic and social issue. We have to consider, how would we navigate the switch-off threat? We need to look at what happens when this fragile digital supply chain breaks. My advice, this is a specific operational hazard that you should brief your board on this week. Imagine a major crisis hits and your internal communication, your stakeholder analysis, your drafting tools just vanish. And they vanish because of a back-end infrastructure dispute you have zero control over. Imagine too your organisation is decision-making, and its decision-making affects your stakeholders. What will they do? Now, a total global extinction of AI is pretty unlikely, but the high probability threat is workflow attrition driven by some of these particular vectors. A government might restrict a provider during a tense election. Power grid limits could cause sharp, sudden increases in compute costs. Suddenly, your systems slow down, services degrade, and smaller organisations get pushed right to the back of the queue. Losing access to embedded AI isn't just an IT outage, it's a severe governance and reputational risk. Beyond just the operational risk of the switch-off, we have to always address the ethical dilemmas, the invisible policy iceberg, because this is fundamentally about trust and your organisation's social licence to operate. There's a huge hidden danger here. When you adopt an AI system to perform a task, you're unknowingly adopting someone else's policy position. The visible output is just the tip of the iceberg. Under the waterline are the US commercial norms, or European regulatory defaults, or Chinese control settings. These hidden architectures are dictating what gets summarised, what gets flagged, what's omitted from your organisation's worldview, what I see and don't see when I'm looking for answers, when I'm looking for help and services. The ethical weight of this is immense. In a recent encyclical, Pope Leo stated, artificial intelligence needs to be disarmed, not abandoned, not rejected, disarmed. That's a profound mandate, and it calls on us all as leaders to shift from just being fascinated by the tech and the shiny tools to exercising real professional responsibility. We have to constantly ask, whose values are truly in control here? Where are words being turned into weapons and wounds? And where might harm be automated? As a result, public relations leaders are essentially navigating a massive trilemma. You're trying to, and we're all trying to reconcile the US market norms, European regulations, and Chinese systems. We have to actively govern these intersecting, often contradictory logics, because what we're trying to do is protect the relationships, the truth, and the trust that our organisations fundamentally depend on. That means upgrading your crisis protocols. Turn all of this into actionable concrete steps to reclaim your operational sovereignty and plan for that sudden loss of access. The very first defence is mapping your exposure with a dependency audit. You need to discover exactly which geopolitical stack powers your operations. Where is the data practically stored? Which hyperscale cloud provider hosts it? If that single vendor vanished or just became prohibitively expensive tomorrow, what critical communication workflows would instantly halt? Then consider a strict 2-tool minimum rule. True operational sovereignty means ensuring your agency has a robust redundancy architecture in place. If your primary approved tool is on a US stack, your approved alternative needs to be a fully vetted backup on a completely different corporate or geopolitical stack. And critically, you absolutely must maintain a non-AI fallback, a manual continuity process that you can deploy the second compute access degrades. Implement a traffic light system for your team's AI governance. Green means unrestricted support. AI can freely assist with low-risk, everyday drafting and tasks. Amber, human verification is mandatory for things like stakeholder analysis. But red, that's absolutely crucial. Human judgment is mandatory, and AI must not act independently for crisis response, legal decisions, vulnerable community communication. When all that's in place, we can finally start reclaiming operational agency. We've got to improve and elevate our internal AI literacy from merely knowing how to put together a clever prompt to exercising rigorous executive-level professional judgment. Leaders must demand greater digital infrastructure transparency from the providers. Don't just leave it to procurement or to IT. Get involved. Use these real talking points to challenge your vendors. Ask them directly, what happens to your workflow if you lose access to the cloud? Is our confidential reputational data training your system? You just cannot accept a cheerful sales narrative when your organisation's social licence is on the line. So this is what I call what we need to do on a Monday morning. It's what we need to follow immediately. Go to your teams, map your dependencies beyond just the basic tools. Make sure that your sensitive data is protected. Build that 2-tool redundancy architecture that I mentioned. And most important, ensure that AI governance is a core pillar of protecting your organisational relationships. As the titans and the tigers continue to carve up our global digital landscape, I suggest there's one more question to ask your colleagues. Are we confusing access with agency? Are we merely renting temporary access to a fragile, politically exposed system, or are we actively securing the sovereignty of our most critical communications? Because while the infrastructure might be controlled by the giants, we still get to choose how exposed we might be. You get to choose how exposed you become. Thank you for listening today, and my warmest wishes to each and everyone here.